All right, guys. So just as you thought the mainstream liberal media and school boards couldn't stoop any lower, right? Can't stoop any lower than how they've stooped, right? In regards to, the mainstream media not covering things fairly and being overtly biased towards their left-wing agenda. And the school boards, again, being overtly biased towards a left-wing agenda. They actually stoop even lower, right? As school boards are essentially asking the FBI for help, as they want to label parents as domestic terrorists for essentially protesting policies that parents don't like at school board meetings. And the left-wing media, because they have a leftist agenda, have come out here and ran stories and pushed this narrative that somehow, parents who don't like what's taught to their kids in school, or some of the mandates that are being implemented in school, somehow they're a domestic terrorist threat. And I want you guys to watch this highlight reel of mainstream liberal news talking about this subject. Take a look.
Cry for help, a shocking turn in the fight over vaccine and mask mandates in schools. School boards across the country calling on the White House to send federal agents to protect them from angry parents, saying their protests should be treated as domestic terrorism. Action.
Across the country, schools are facing increased violence and threats, stemming in part from people frustrated by mask and vaccine mandates. This morning, the National School Boards Association is calling for federal action, describing the attacks against staff and students as a new form of domestic terrorism. The group calling on the Biden administration to provide federal assistance to local law enforcement agencies to monitor and prevent future threats.
Members have been berated at meetings and threatened online.
Writing to President Biden, the National School Boards Association asked for help investigating the violent incidents and suggested the FBI monitor threats to board members, likening these heinous actions to domestic terrorism.
COVID concerns in school districts across the country are now leading to dangerous situations for school board members. They're worried for their own safety after an increasing number of threats like these.
Calm down. Yes. Calm down. We know who you are. We know who you are. You can leave freely, but we will find you, and we know who you are. You will never be allowed in public again.
And I'm going to come for everybody that comes at my kid with this stupid, ridiculous mandate.
We are the storm, and we are here already. And when this whole thing crumbles to the ground, we will be here to hold you accountable for your crimes against humanity.
You are allowing child abuse. 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 You, with your snotty little face, you're allowing it as well.
So the National School Boards Association is asking the White House and the Education Department to help ensure the security of its members. And the group's president, Viola Garcia, is joining us now to talk about this. Viola, thank you for being with us this morning. You wrote a letter to President Biden asking, because you say you're under immediate threat, for assistance, for federal law enforcement and other assistance to deal with some of what we just saw. Tell us what exactly you think your members need.
Well, we need support. We need reinforcement of the sort that the community can give us. But more importantly, these are real threats, Brianna, that you just saw, that we all just saw, and they're occurring with greater frequency. So our letter to the White House really is indicative of the seriousness of the situation for school board members, but more especially for students in our public schools.
All right, guys, so you've seen that, you heard that. First and foremost, I want to say I don't endorse or condone any threats of violence, right? I think that is wrong. That's always the wrong way to go about it. However, I will say I will stand up for people's right to freedom of speech and for them to peacefully assemble and to protest, right, for against government policy, because that's essentially what it is, that they don't agree with, right? And there's no doubt in my mind that a vast majority of the parents that are attending these school board meetings are doing so in a way that is peaceful, right? They may get loud, they may, say mean things. But again, as long as they're not making threats of violence, then, they should be allowed to speak. They shouldn't have to worry about being labeled a domestic terrorist just because you speak out against policies you don't agree with that your school is trying to implement on children. And the reason why this is a big deal, guys, because we all know how this slippery slope works. We all know how the left-wing media likes to play this game. What they'll do is they say, well, we're just concerned about people making threats of violence, right? We want to have the FBI target parents speaking up at school board meetings, but we're just going after those parents that we feel might be violent. It starts there, and then it extends towards, well, anytime a parent speaks up at a school board meeting regarding some of these mandates and policies they don't agree with, oh, they're going to be labeled a terrorist. They'll be on a list, right? That's what always happens. But, we're supposed to have free speech in this country, right? Parents should be able to speak out against government policies that they don't agree with. However, what you have happening here is the left-wing liberal media pushing this narrative that these parents who protest at school board meetings, oh, they're domestic terrorists. They are people that we got to put on the list, right? We need the FBI and the Biden administration to go after those people because they're simply protesting government policy that they don't agree with. And what I also find to be strange is how they're only framing this as, well, parents are just protesting about the COVID mandates, right? And the policies regarding that. And it's like, no, parents are protesting about a lot of stuff, right? They're protesting about a lot of the woke agenda that's being pushed in schools, right? And the things that kids are learning in schools. It's not just about, the mandates. That's not just what it's about. Right, but they skirt over that because they don't want to talk about that. Okay, they don't want to talk about that. I think the most hypocritical part about this is how left-wing media is running this segment and this narrative that wants to frame parents that are concerned about their kids as domestic terrorists. However, they endorsed domestic terrorism all last year. The mainstream liberal media, like CNN, endorsed Black Lives Matter and Antifa running around, destroying neighborhoods and using violence to achieve a political goal, right? Which is literally exactly what they're trying to condemn right now, right? They're trying to condemn the threat of violence, right? Or violence to essentially achieve a political goal of trying to change policies in schools. But for whatever reason, all last year, that was okay, right? The mainstream liberal media endorsed that when it came to BLM and Antifa. And it really blows my mind that the mainstream media is running this narrative, right? And this school board is essentially asking the FBI to label parents as domestic terrorists when the FBI guys, they don't even track and monitor Antifa's activities. Matter of fact, take a look at this clip from Miss Representative Nancy Mace pressing the FBI this week on if they track anything Antifa does. Take a look.
Category or subcategory of domestic terrorism? Would that include groups like Antifa or Black Lives Matter, folks who commit violence or acts of domestic terrorism?
Well, we don't identify groups, but individuals' actions. So if individuals are committing actions that would be in furtherance of anti-government or anarchist ideals, then they would fall into that category.
So would you quantify Antifa as an anarchist group then under that subcategory? I mean, it's an anarchist group, right? Or related?
There are individuals, I think the director has previously described them as a movement, and there have been individuals that have associated or identified with Antifa that have conducted violent acts that we would categorize as anarchist.
How many acts of violence or domestic terrorism has Antifa committed over the last 2 years?
Since we don't categorize Antifa, nor do we calculate or collate information regarding Antifa, that movement, we don't have that, but we could provide you information on anarchist threats and cases in general.
How many open cases of anarchist violence and domestic terrorism have occurred over the last 2 years?
So we have, as far as arrest activities for the anti-government, anti-authority, we have 75 total arrests, and within that would be the anti-government 36 being of anti-government and 21 being militia violence. That's all part of our anti-government authority.
Okay. And interesting. I mean, Antifa's real. It's not a myth.
All right, guys. So you see that? You heard that? When the FBI director is pressed on whether or not Antifa, right, or BLM, like how do they classify, their acts of domestic terrorism? Dude's just like, not really worried about them that much, right? We don't really classify groups like that as domestic terrorists. I mean, we may look at individual acts, and go from there. Basically, what he's saying is that they're not on our radar. We don't really care about them that much. That's what he's saying. Even though, again, we've seen so much footage of the violence and destruction that have been caused by those two groups over the last year, right? We know that they've caused billions of dollars of damage. Okay, we see them burn down neighborhoods, loot, riot. People have lost their lives. And again, in my opinion, all of what happened last year was the largest domestic terror event that we've ever seen in this country's history. But for whatever reason, mainstream liberal media, FBI is saying, I don't know, right? Like, there's not really anything to worry about. However, when it comes to parents protesting at a school board over policies that their schools are implementing and pushing on children that they don't agree with, we need the FBI's help. These people are domestic terrorists, right? They're domestic threats. Ain't it crazy how that works, man? This is how the mainstream liberal media operates, guys. This is how they brainwash people into believing that there are certain groups of people in this country that are threats, right? And there's other people that's not, regardless of, the actions, okay? Regardless of that, right? Two different sides can do the same exact thing. They can commit the same exact act, right? But one will be labeled domestic terrorism and another won't, based off what the mainstream liberal media agenda is. And this right here shows it very clearly. They never ran a news story like this. The mainstream liberal media, when it came to Black Lives Matter and Antifa, basically questioning, look what's going on in our country, guys. I mean, we have acts of domestic terrorism going on everywhere. The National Guard needs to step in, okay? They went after Trump for suggesting that the National Guard go in, right? They went after Trump for that. But for whatever reason, they're treating the FBI, treating parents as domestic terrorists is a legitimate idea that should be something that we talk about. Like, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.